What's up, guys? Brandon here. Today, sitting in New York City in the Bronx. And New York City, man, they started that congestion pricing, and I had to go pick up my girlfriend Sakina from work in downtown Manhattan. Google said like the estimated tolls was going to be at least like $15, like $16, I guess. That includes like going over a bridge and everything. That's insane. Like it was like probably about $12 just to go into downtown Manhattan to pick somebody up. Wow. But I guess this broke people problems, right? And so I kind of wanted to talk about going to college for music, which is something I did. I know I talked about it a couple times on this channel, but I wanted to talk about the irony of going to college for music, in that music is an expensive sport. It's expensive. And music takes time. You can't just look at a piece of music and hear it. You know, if the piece of music's 5 minutes long, it's going to take you 5 minutes to listen to it. And it's going to take you a hell of a lot longer than 5 minutes to write it. So music by default, by definition, it requires time. And a lot of people going to college for music end up working low-wage jobs that take up a lot of time to make a basic living. And if you spend all your time working to make a basic living, you have no time to play music. You just don't. Music will fall to the wayside. And then you start to have an existential crisis where it's like, well, what was the point of going to college for music if I can't do anything with it? I don't have time. I can't even make money doing it. And part of that too is this technology shift. Because I went to college for sound engineering. So it's not even like I just went for like a guitar degree and thought I was going to make money playing guitar, which guitar lessons is like a viable, like doing any kind of lessons business is a viable way to make money. It really is. But building up that client list at the end of the day is a business. You're running a business, and most musicians never think of themselves as running a business. Like I never imagined I was going to be a business owner. I always thought I was never going to do anything business related. But the truth is, to be successful in music, you need to be able to, run a successful business or understand the business of music or understand the business of lessons. So if you're all music, if your brain can only handle music and you can't handle the business side of it, it's going to be very difficult to make money with music. And even when it comes to sound engineering, it was kind of like I was being fed this fantasy that I was going to get this degree and go to, go online or look for a job, and there was just going to be people like, oh, quick, we're looking for a recording engineer and we're going to pay a livable wage. I ain't like ever see a position where somebody was hiring a recording engineer. And I'll tell you why. As a recording engineer or as somebody who's doing studio work, that's your clientele. Like, you have to build up those clients, and you're not going to just hand away those clients to some kid who graduated college, and then you're going to like pay them, unless you're going to pay them some hourly wage. But still, most people who are doing this sort of thing also own the studio. And anyways, like back to sort of the technology shift, as well as when I got my degree. Well, let me reverse or start back. During the span of the 4 years that I went to college, so I started in 2010, graduated in 2014. In that short amount of time, I watched Apple start shipping out all their MacBooks with GarageBand. So it was like anybody was now a producer. You had access to these to equipment to do your own production, and buying an audio interface, they just started to get cheaper. It started to become more viable to record at home. But the program I was going to was sort of teaching you how to record old school, like it was 1970, and rock bands were going to pay, thousands of dollars to record in a big studio. And the truth is people just aren't quite doing that anymore. Obviously there's some space for it, but most, actually, like every band I know, like personally know the people in the band, they're doing these recordings at home, or they're doing them at like a buddy's home. Like they just don't have the budget to go to these big studios. And anyways, the point that I'm trying to make is that in that short amount of time, the technology improved, things became cheaper, the plugins got better. There just became less of a need for that industry, and any industry is just subject to that, especially with AI right now. Who knows what industries are next. Like, you could enroll into a 4-year degree, and by the end of the 4 years, you could be obsolete. You literally could be obsolete. When I graduated college, I was working in audiobooks, and in that short time that I worked in audiobooks for about 5 years, and so I spent 9 years in total on this like fever dream of I don't know, being a sound engineer and somehow having a normal life. But in that short time that I worked on audiobooks, I used to like record the narrator. That was a big part. Like, I would go in there, set up the microphone, make sure the levels were right. Yeah, you're literally engineering. There's some engineering involved to capture these recordings correctly. But in that time, the narrators were being told to record themselves, which is not that unbelievable. It's like you just press the record button and read into a mic. So my job was being cut through. It was cost cutting and just efficiency. I guess you don't need two people, but it's helpful because the engineer does help with. There's things that you're doing. I'm double checking the narrator and whatever. I don't need to prove like why it's useful to have an engineer, but the point is, eventually these narrators started doing punch-ins. So before, we would get the narrators recording with all their mistakes in it, and we would edit that down and keep the best takes. Maybe they do 3 takes of a line. We take the best one, make sure that's in the final version. But eventually they started having the narrators even punch in. So now, like, if they make a mistake, they just go back on the recording, they re-record over the mistake, and they're basically sending you a finished file. Yeah, we might go in, clean it up, double check that there's no like missing lines or double lines, which still happen, but for the most part, it was like my job was kind of being whittled away. And I just knew there wasn't like a future in that. And again, I was working like a low wage job essentially with a very low barrier to entry, that it just, I just didn't think it was worth it. It really wasn't worth it. I would also say that again, music's an expensive sport. So if you're not coming from like a family with some type of money or nest egg, or you don't have some kind of cushion, and you're like a starving artist and you're going to go to college for music, I just don't recommend it. I mean, you're going to study everything but actually like making music. Like, I had to take 4 semesters of music theory, and in the 4th semester we're talking about this like modern, I don't even know how you call it music, because I think it just sounds like eclectic noise. We're talking about this guy, this composer who painted a ceiling, and he let paint drop onto pieces of paper that had notes, and then the order of the paint dropping and hitting the notes was the music. And so when you listen to it, it literally sounds like random noise. And then the professor wants to argue with you and tell you, no, it's not noise, this is music, because it's intentional. But come on, let's be real. Most people are not going to listen to that and say, oh, this is great, this is music, this is what I can hear it in my head. No, it sounds like noise. I'm a classical musician. I want my music to sound nice and pretty. I don't want it to sound like noise. So when you realize that you're not even really going to study the music, like you're not necessarily going to become a better composer. Yeah, you'll get connected to other musicians, but to be honest, like everybody, the music world, you tend to deal with a lot of like egotistical assholes who think they're like God's greatest gift because they can play like Vivaldi on the fucking violin, or they can copy paste a bunch of like jazz licks, and you're just dealing with ego because you don't have anything else, like you have to prove why you're so good or something. I don't know. I don't know what people are trying to prove, but you can tell it's like a survival mechanism. It's like everything I'm studying is just a game, so I have to be serious about this game. Otherwise, nobody's going to take it seriously. The most I learned about music, especially like the kind of music I wanted to make, was I literally emailed a producer who I liked his music. I liked how he did it. And I was like, listen, man, help me. Like I went to college for music or production, and I'm struggling. And I basically, ironically, I had to unlearn everything that I learned in college because they just were teaching sort of outdated stuff. Again, we were learning everything to the old model. That's how things were done in the 70s. Okay, that's great. You learn like a base knowledge, but it's not useful because we're going to college to get useful information. And that was just not useful. So the most I learned was literally paying a guy $60 per hour to do Zoom calls with me, and I would ask him like a million questions. That was the most I ever learned. And I'll post a link to some of my music in the description. The producer was Meta and Glide. If you like trance music, some people think I'm saying trance. It's not trance music, it's trance music. It's like EDM sort of dance music. Anyway, that's my jam. I love trance music. Meta and Glide are one of the top trance producers out there. So one of the guys from that duo, Adam, he took a lot of time and just really worked with me, and I really appreciate that. Like I'll never forget the amount of time that guy spent and how my productions went from being not signed, like nobody was listening to them, to all of a sudden I'm getting signed. I've got music on Spotify. I've got music coming out this year. It's just like something I'm doing in the background. It's not even, But anyways, like if I relied on whatever I learned in college, I just wouldn't be there. So my review or my take on college for music, if you need it as a stepping stone to get into some kind of graduate degree program and you really are interested in music, okay, it's not a bad idea. You could definitely, it's an easy undergrad degree to get. You're not going to beat your head trying to like learn engineering and then you're going to go to law school. You know what I mean? Like that would be crazy. So, okay, you want to go to law school, you just need some random degree. Maybe you want to be a copyright attorney or something. Okay, you could get the music degree, then go into law school. But if you're looking for like a career that like pays decent or halfway decent, and you don't want to like be working low wage jobs, like you want something with a little bit of a higher barrier to entry, I recommend not studying music. Music is a very low barrier to entry. You don't need a degree to pick up your guitar and stand in the subway station and start playing music. You don't need a degree to get signed by record labels. You can literally learn all that stuff on YouTube. But anyways, guys, if you got questions about like music and college or anything like that, or anything music questions in general, go ahead, fire them in the comments. I'm a huge music geek, I guess. I love music. I love production. So I'm grateful that I went and followed my passion to some degree, but it has caused me a lot of pain. Look at this car I'm sitting in. Okay, this is what I could afford with a music degree. I had to look for other ways. I mean, if I stayed in that industry, I would have been like the dude. I know I had talked about this. He was like 10 years older than me. The man was crying because he could not afford repairs on his car, and he had been in the audiobook industry again for like 10 years longer than me. So if that's where he's at in 10 years, that's not where I want to be. So I'm looking at other routes. I'm really weighing my options. Obviously, I've started my home inspection business, which pays me much more than what I would make doing audiobooks. And I have I do it in way less time, which has allowed me more time for music. But I'm not happy with my income level. I want a higher income level. I want to be able to afford the normal life, you know, like an okay car. I don't want to be struggling to pay rent. And I want to get married and have kids one day. So I just don't see myself doing that with a music degree. So really, really think about it, because you're 20 or you're like 18, and that's when you're kind of making that decision to go to college for music. Really think about where you're going to be in 10 years. Because if in 10 years you see yourself standing in the subway busking and you think that's acceptable and you never want to get married, okay, go for a music degree. But if like you want a career with like a higher bar to entry, you want to actually like provide value to society, I don't really recommend the music degree. I just can't recommend it. I mean, if you want to be a music teacher, okay, you're really passionate about that, but even teachers sound like they're struggling too. But anyways, guys, again, if you got questions, drop them in the comments. Thanks for listening, guys. All right, I'll always talk about this because it's always on my mind. But all right, hey, I'll see you guys in the next one.